Good afternoon. My name is Patty Barron, and I am the Director of Family Programs for AUSA, and welcome to our 2013 Military Family Forums. We are just delighted that you're here today and hope that you will enjoy the next 2.5 days as much as we've enjoyed planning it. But before I say anything else, I want to introduce to the stage a very, very special guest, someone that I'm very fond of, someone that I learn constantly from. He is a former Chief of Staff of the Army and currently the President of the Association of the United States Army, General Gordon Sullivan.
It's my man over there. Well, let me pay my respects to the front row. Obviously, I didn't really know I was going to be speaking in here this afternoon, so here we go. Mrs. Odierno, General Allen, Mrs. Ferreter. I'll stop there and just say hi to everybody. Okay, Patty is wonderful. Patty's wonderful. Without Patty, she's got so much energy, and it's just great. You know, I've been hanging around the Army a long time, and I'm convinced that as time has passed, the family has become more and more important to the Army. And if we lost the families of our soldiers during the course of these wars, these last two wars, this thing would have collapsed like a deck of cards. And I think it's a tribute to the family members who are here and the organizations like the one that Mike leads, that this thing held together. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you for what you have done. These have been the last 10, 12, 13 years, or actually the last 20-odd years when you go back from the time we invaded Panama. It's been one thing after another for the last, it's now what? Almost, well, that was 89. So it's been 25 years. It's been one thing after another. And it's been, get the bags out, let's go. And the spouses, the families have stood by. Little people like this right over here. And I'm not sure we fully understand the damage that has been done. But at any rate, on a happy note, let's say this gathering right here is very, very important. We're proud to have a program such as this, and in large part it is due to the work of Patty Barron and her team of people. So thanks a lot for coming. Thanks for your energy. And I know Patty looks forward to all the hard questions. And I'm sure there's some things I might be able to do myself with the association to help, and I'm prepared to do it. So anyway, gang, thanks a lot. Okay. Got it?
I got it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate you coming. He's such a nice guy. And so, not only would I like to welcome the in-house audience, and there's many of you here today, which is very exciting, and I think more will be joining us, but I also want to give a special shout out to the virtual audience that's all over the United States and across the, and even overseas. We actually have 70 virtual delegate sites across the country right now, and we just can't be more thrilled to have that kind of support. But I wanted to start by telling you that we have been very busy this past year, and we have several new initiatives and ideas, and you might have already noticed one of them. If you looked on the front of your goodie bag, you might notice that we have a new name and a new logo. We are now called the AUSA Family Readiness Directorate, not Family Programs, because we feel it's more reflective of the work that we do, as we hope that we can provide military families tangible support for a good quality of life throughout their military life cycle. And so we are ready to do what we need to do. I also wanted to give a shout out to the virtual delegate sites, if I could, and if we could have the next slide. We have forums on several different installations, again. And we have many forums that are joining us from Recruiting Command. Again. And again. And we have wonderful sites from the National Guard and also from the Reserve component, the U.S. Army Reserve. So we couldn't be more excited to have such wonderful participation. So let's give it a shout out to all our virtual delegates. Thanks, everybody. Super glad you're with us. Okay, as I said, we have tried very hard to reach out to folks and reach out to all of you so that we can help to improve the quality of life of our Army families. And an example of this would be our involvement with the Military Spouse Employment Ambassador Network, which is a collection of organizations within the Military Spouse Employment Partnership that have established a community networks who want to leverage and broaden knowledge to military spouses that are seeking employment. So I'd like to go ahead and give a shout out to the MSEP folks, which is the next slide. Oh, that's our new logo. One more. There we go. Yay, MSEP. We've also been very fortunate. We've been reaching out to other military service organizations to add volume to the chorus of voices that speak out on your behalf. Collaborations with the National Military Family Association, Blue Star Families, Joining Forces, the Military Association, the Military Officers Association of America, the Military Education Coalition, Child Education Coalition, and MISA are just a few that we've been working with this past year, and we're very, very grateful for the support that they've provided us and also for allowing us to provide support to them. So yay for those great organizations. But perhaps the most exciting venture that we are launching this year is the AUSA Spouse Membership Category. Next slide. The AUSA Spouse Membership Category came about after we had a focus group with spouses from the different components and different ranks areas, and we spoke to them about why it would be important to have a spouse membership category within the AUSA. And they told us very loud and clear, because we want our own individual voice within the association. We want to be able to tell you what's on our minds and to also make things happen. And so we were thrilled to work on that, and I'm happy to announce that beginning today, we are proud to launch the AUSA Spouse Membership Category, which will allow military and surviving spouses the ability to join in their own right. In addition, spouses of DA and DoD civilians may also join AUSA in this new category, because many of them are finding that their spouses are being deployed and they are seeing a lot of the same issues that our military spouses also see. Joining AUSA in the spouse membership category will bring your important voice to the conversation, and we really are excited about it. But wait, there's more. Next slide. You can't have a new membership category without a little bling, now can you? I don't think we can. So we are very proud that we partnered with Ann Hand, a Washington, D.C. Ann Hand fame, who helped us design our very own AUSA spouse membership pin. And as you see, the logo sits proudly in the center as the 4 stars representing the family readiness pillars of support: information, education, advocacy, and outreach surround the eagle. And on the edge of the pin, it's encircled with a rope lattice that represents the strengths we share with each other as military spouses. So I hope that if you do join us and you get the pin, that you'll enjoy it as much as I do. All righty, one more slide, and that's where you can find the membership category if you so choose to. Because what I'd like to tell you is that the first 100 spouses in-house today that, or not today, for the next 3 days, that join AUSA are going to receive a free Ann Hand pin. And virtual delegates, I have not forgotten about you. The first spouses, 100 spouses that join us online between Monday and Wednesday will also receive a free pin, so we're excited about that. All right, so let's get to the business that we're here for. And we need to talk about what the AUSA Military Family Forums are going to cover this year. The overarching theme for the 2013 Military Family Forums is the concept of empowering oneself to live a good quality of life throughout your military career, which is very, very important. After 10 years of war and robust resources, we find ourselves in a place of reduced military budgets and an impending drawdown of forces. We ask questions, but we don't always get the answers that we need to be able to deal with the challenges that are put forth. And I don't know about you, but as an Army spouse, I could always deal or handle anything that was given to me as long as I knew what it was and I knew where I needed to go to find the help to do well and to help my family do well. Therefore, these forums are dedicated to finding what you need, when you need it, where you need it. And we're going to begin with a town hall style forum today where we're going to hear from several of our senior leaders, and we'll be taking your questions both in-house and virtually. You all have question cards, so please feel free to fill them out and hang them, put them up high so we can see them so that we can collect them throughout the talks, please. We're also going to be able to receive questions from our virtual audience as they ask questions on our Facebook page, and we will be able to hopefully engage them today as well. So excited about that. I just want to close with telling you that many years ago, I was a young spouse who accompanied my soldier to our first duty station, which was in northern Germany. He was stationed in Garlstedt, and we were going to live in Osterholz-Scharmbeck. He took me to this cute little guest house, and 3 days later he said, "I've got to go to the field. I'll see you in a month." And there I was, all by myself in the middle of Germany, 22 years old, not quite knowing what it is that I needed to do. I could have felt sorry for myself and maybe panicked a little, but I didn't, because what I ended up finding was a wonderful support system from military spouses who had already been stationed there a little bit longer, and also from wonderful resources that were available to me, especially Army Community Service. They were phenomenal, and they saved my life, I think, because I think that if it wasn't for the support of military spouses and for the support of Army Community Service, I would not have made it. And I'm here still, 33 years later, 30 years active duty, 3 years retired, and we're still going strong, and my wonderful husband is in the audience somewhere over there, so yay. Love him lots. So thank you all for joining us. We're excited about getting started. And we have a special treat for you now, as we have some very special ladies. They're going to be introducing some very special gentlemen. So come on up.
Good afternoon. I'm Margie Ferreter, and I'm here to introduce my husband, Mike. We've been married 34 years, and so there's your cue, so in case anyone asks you. We were thrilled to be part of the first forum this year of the 2013 AUSA programs. I'll tell you a little bit about Mike. Mike is very committed to the family, the soldier, and to the Army life as a whole. In fact, so committed that he actually has 2 jobs. He has not 1 but 2 jobs in the Army. He's both the commander of Installation Management Command that our family programs falls under, and he also is the Army Assistant Chief of Staff for Installation Management. So his true mission is to make sure that we improve the lives of our most precious commodities, which is our soldier and our families. Mike grew up as an Army brat. He was raised by a father who was a World War II vet and a mother. He moved quite often in his youth, and he enjoyed the offerings of what back then was given for families in the youth sports and in the ACS programs. He grew up, and during that time, he really found that the Army community is what kept the families together, the commitment to each other. He grew up and married me, an Army brat, and together we raised 4 children. And just like all of you and all of you out there in the world that's watching us today, he lived just like we all lived. We lived paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes it was good months, and sometimes it was really lean months. But during that time, he discovered the most important thing was not the pay we were getting, but the community we lived in, and the resiliency that we got from our neighbors and our friends and our family. So again, he had early on commitment to the programs that would help the families get by day to day. He, like many of you, deployed and while he was deployed, he would worry. He would worry about those of us at home, worrying about things that might happen, and then also rejoicing from afar when things great happened. Again, we relied on the family programs that were provided to both the families at home and the soldiers that were deployed with him. He ended up coming back, and all of a sudden, those 4 children grew up, and 3 of them entered the Army, 1 married a soldier. So now he's the dad of soldiers. So once again, very committed to what is available for the soldier and their families. And then if you have not heard, he is also now a granddad of an Army child. So again, we once again think it's very important for families and family programs. So Mike, as he will come up here and talk to you today, know that he and I have lived the life that we're all living now, and we think it's a wonderful life to live. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Lil Ingram. Bill and I are honored to be with you today and so grateful for the opportunity to talk with you about the Army National Guard family programs. It's a real treat for me to be able to share a little information about Lieutenant General Bill Ingram, who is the director of the Army National Guard. The National Guard has always been part of his life. He grew up in a Guard family. His father, after returning from World War II, established a Guard unit and then served as its first commander in his hometown of Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Bill has always understood the importance of family support, family readiness, and now, after 43-plus years of service, he has even a greater appreciation. Bill deployed to Bosnia in 1997 and then again to Kosovo in 1999. At that time in the National Guard, deployments were extremely rare. So for our family to have back-to-back deployments was life-changing. I wasn't really sure what it meant to deploy. I knew very little about Bosnia and Kosovo, and I wasn't prepared for my husband to leave our family for 1 year. Our 2 sons in high school, our 3rd son in the 7th grade, and I had a few short weeks to get everything ready before Dad's deployment. I became the family readiness group leader for the unit. Bill and I instantly learned what it meant to deploy. Looking back on those deployments, they were blessings in disguise. They prepared us for what was coming next. In July of 2001, Bill was appointed as the Adjutant General for the North Carolina National Guard. He commanded nearly 12,000 citizen soldiers. One of his first decisions was to move the Family Readiness Office onto the command hall, a few doors down from his office, to immediately develop his Family Readiness team. A few short weeks later was September 11th, 2001. That day forever changed the National Guard. Now, it was not a question of if a Guardsman would be deployed, but when and how often he or she would deploy. Bill has never wavered from his deep committing to supporting all families. He worked closely with the governor in North Carolina to establish several state-supported family assistance centers. To date, I think North Carolina remains the only state that has multi-component family assistance centers. And because Guardsmen are dispersed throughout a state, living in almost every zip code, they don't reside on an installation. Facts are our way to reach all of our families, provide the resources they need, and keep all of our families well informed. Bill realized the need for extra assistance for our families, and he worked tirelessly to accomplish that goal. He always puts the well-being of others first. Our family resides in his heart and soul. When he talks about our 3 sons, our 2 daughters-in-law, and our 2 precious granddaughters, there's a sweet, loving twinkle in his eyes. I couldn't help but smile the other day when I looked at his calendar. It was so full, complete with Oconus visits to deployed soldiers, a myriad of endless meetings, and there was written Marin's ballet recital. Marin's our granddaughter, and I'm happy to say he was able to attend that recital. And now it is my pleasure to introduce my husband, Lieutenant General Bill Ingram.
Good afternoon. My name's Linda Talley. I'll introduce you to my husband and best friend. We've known each other for 35 years. Been married 33 years. We have 4 children. We are not grandparents, thank God. We did just get one engaged, though. We're looking at churches and sad. I'm not prepared for that. Jeff and I have had a very interesting life. I've come from a military family. His father was in World War II. He was raised, had 4 brothers and an identical twin. Very competitive, all-boy family. So tough love. And then, of course, we had 3 boys and 1 girl. So that girl is tough, just like her dad. And so Jeff was active duty for 10.5 years. And then he got out and went in the reserves. But the funny thing is, before he did that, we went to Korea. And before he went to Korea, he promised me that to get that girl, we had 3 boys already, and he had to have another child. And I said, why? And I said, honey, we have 3 boys, we should be happy. And he said, honey, I will stay in the Army. We have a good life. And then we went to Korea for 2 years. And we came back. And to get that girl, he promised to stay in the military. You know, stability, you know. And we came back, and he was to get out. And I'm like, wait a minute. We went to Korea for 2 years. You maybe, you know, do Korea for 2 years, and now you're going to get out. So that's my story about Korea. But anyhow, he got out and went Army Reserves. And it was very interesting, because now you have a citizen soldier who has a real job, you know, they say, and then you have a part-time Army job, and you think that you don't work as much when you're in the reserves. Every weekend just about. And I'm like, I thought you're not going to work as hard in the military, but you do. It's interesting how much people don't realize when you're in the Army Reserves how hard they really do work. It's every weekend just about at first. And it was a very different lifestyle for us at first. And until you live it, you don't realize what a life-changing event that was for us. And we've been doing it for 23 years, Army Reserves. And through that time, he's done 2 deployments, and now he's the chief of the Army Reserves and the CG Commanding General at Fort Bragg. And he's been in that role for 16 months. And it's been very interesting, fun. Some days are good, some days are bad. But we have really enjoyed it, and I am very excited to introduce my husband. It's been a joy to be by his side. I have enjoyed every moment with him. We all have ups and downs in our lifetime, but I would not change one day without him. I'd like to introduce my husband and best friend, Jeff Daly.
Well, let's give a big round of applause to those 3 great ladies. Hey, listen, wow, to General Allen and to Linda Odierno and Dan Campbell Patty Horoho's husband with us as well, Ray, the Dasser's wife as well, and General Brooks hiding over here trying not to be seen with an empty seat up front. If he wants to come up there, no one will even pay attention. But, and to all of you, what a great day to be a soldier, and what an especially great day to be a soldier right here with you in the family forum at AUSA. What a great day to be Army civilians. What a great day to be Army family members. And I'd ask you all to give a big round of applause to all of you for being a part of the greatest Army in the world. Thank you. We probably have with us as well the Flores family, our family of the year, AUSA family of the year. Are they in the room with us? And they may join us. And if they do, what an awesome family. And we may have in the room with us, or certainly delegates across the nation, across the world, we may have Gold Star family members and survivors. If you are a Gold Star family member, or if you are a survivor, would you please stand up at this time? There we go. Thank you very much. God bless you. And so often when we're introduced, guys like us say, wow, I wish my wife could have heard that. And in this case, my wife said that. So that's pretty neat. So Margie, thanks for the introduction, and thanks for all that you've done for the Army and for our awesome family as well. I'm going to talk to you about where we're going with family programs as far as Installation Management Command goes, and what we see in the next year. I'm going to describe the commitment of the senior leaders of the Army, and lay out a little bit how they see things, how we've wrapped things up inside a thing that you know since 2007 has been called the Army Family Covenant, and then how we've organized ourselves for the next year and the year beyond, despite funding restrictions, how we, the Army, are doing that, how we, all compo of the Army, are doing that, so that we can continue to take care of our soldiers, our Army families, and our Army civilians. God bless you all. And so, as we start out, go to this next slide, please. It's just about 3 or 4 slides. First is, you know, often people say that Installation Management Command and ACSIM is a pretty big job, pretty tough job. And even some of my friends say, I'm really glad I don't have your job, Mike. And I say, I'm really glad I do have my job. And I'll tell you why. Because if you have the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army and the Sergeant Major of the Army, who all believe what we believe, and in fact they really press to make sure we deliver as they've asked us to champion soldiers, civilians, and families from the Secretary of the Army, from the Chief for soldiers to be committed to our profession and to have the premier all-volunteer Army, and then from the Sergeant Major of the Army to have a ready and resilient force. If you have that kind of backing, which then is translated into our major commanders around the world, commanders like Dan Allen, General Dan Allen, and General Vince Brooks, and General Cohn, and General Vi, and Don Campbell over in Europe. If you have that kind of power of alignment, then what can go wrong? And so we are all leaning at the right time for the right thing. In the room as well, we've got many, many members of the installation management community. And you know what? That includes IMCOM and ACSIM. That includes the Army G1 and MedCom. That includes the PMO. If it happens inside a fence line on an installation or nearby or at a distributed site across, then you're on the team. And I'm glad you're on the team. And I would ask those from ACSIM and IMCOM, the garrison commanders from around the United States who've been brought here at the good graces of AUSA, would you stand up for just a second and we'll give you a great round of applause. Thanks a lot for what you do every single day. Well, in the next slide, when we talk about the Army Family Covenant, we want to make sure we're straight in everyone's mind that the covenant is about a promise and a commitment to people. And this shows soldiers and their families and children and adolescents and wounded warriors and their family, and then survivors, our dear survivors, our Gold Star families, deployed soldiers and their families, single soldiers, and those geographically dispersed in the active component and in the reserve component. And if that's who we serve, then the real question is, how do we organize so that we deliver? In the next slide, we'll talk about that. It's a simple depiction of, from the big idea, the commitment that provides confidence in order to sustain the Army's promise and sustain an Army culture and care. And as we heard twice now in one day, we heard from the Secretary of the Army. Not going to turn our back on this. We know there's still great need, and as the number of deployed soldiers diminishes, the need for taking care of soldiers and families will increase. It will follow. It will be with us for a couple of years, and then we'll be in a new Army, a new part of that. And so we organize ourselves around a couple of these pillars, and the family programs and access to health care and great Army housing and the child and youth services and employment. And so sometimes you get that big idea. Now we all sort of know where we're going, but we really want to know how we're going to do it. And so this next slide falls under what we rolled out last year, the Ready and Resilient campaign. And you know, we want to make the Army strong. All of us, all Army leaders, from corporal to the top, want to make the Army strong. And in some cases, the soldier or family that you're starting with is super strong. In fact, in most cases. In some cases, they're working through issues. And so if we can help those who need help while we make those who are ready to be made stronger, then that's the idea. And a culture of leadership, caring leadership throughout the Army, is what the Ready and Resilient campaign is about. Within IMCOM and with the rest of the partners on the Army staff and the commands, we kind of said, let's make this predictable and understandable, so whether it's Captain Patty Ferreter, can he and his first sergeant figure this out, or whether it's any spouse, how can I get what I need? We've lined it up this way. And it's just, I'm a simple pilgrim, and so I describe it, that you see in the middle the Army logo, the branding. Now that could be a single individual soldier, the individual family member, the big, all of us. So whoever needs to find themselves there can find help and care around this. So if those of you that are a little bit older, you know what the face of a clock looks like. Those of you who are a little younger, it's digital. Okay, but if that was the face of a clock, at 12 o'clock, you're going to see sponsorship and SHARP, Sexual Harassment Assault Program, the First Sergeant Barracks Program, and Army Substance Abuse and Embedded Health and Behavior. And the idea there is, as soldiers and families move around the Army and move through a lifetime of change, that we have an unblinking eye of how they're doing, where they are, and we warm hand each other from one to the other throughout that first time. So get them on board, get them protected, take care of them, and get them integrated. And if we can do this predictably, all of these concepts, then in many, many cases, we have a roll-on, roll-off capability, to use the analogy, for the senior commanders, warfighting commanders, operational commanders, to get the soldiers, to have their leaders get them, and it's ready for them to operate. If you go from about 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock over here, you'll see programs designed to really make us stronger. And they include comprehensive soldier and family fitness. And Ken Riddle, you here? I saw you coming in. And so the great Colonel Ken Riddle is championing comprehensive soldier and family fitness, master resiliency training, which you'll find at a variety of training sites, as well as in Army Community Services for our spouses, intramurals and sports program. Since we're back, let's have some fun. And let's get on the sideline and let's allow those youngsters within their command to show just how gifted and talented our soldiers are. And then General Allen and I were viewing this one time, and he said, let's not forget about training, good Army training. And so we include that, as these are the things that create balance. And soldiers who are training, soldiers who are doing physical fitness, foot marching and combatives, and marksmanship and battle drill and first aid, then they're confident in their ability. And from that self-esteem and confidence comes a lot of goodness. You'll see General Horoho, the surgeon's performance triad of sleep and activity and nutrition, and you'll hear gobs about that this week. But again, it makes everybody better. And then you see Strong Bonds and the BOSS program, designed. So those are our strong programs. And then we have our special programs from about 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. They're special for our special family members, exceptional family members, our survivors and Gold Star members, and our little guys, like the one who's here whose parents ran out us and took them away before I could talk to them. But, you know, the youngsters in our child development centers, and then, you know, so many of us who grew up playing Little League sports at either AYA or DYA or now CYSS. And from there, they meet sergeants and men of character, women of character who guide them early in their life and teach them right. And then we have our SFAC and our integrated disability. And so then finally, it's sort of an idea of soldier for life. And so from 9 o'clock to about midnight on this metaphor of a clock, we have our Army continuing education, our transition program, and jobs for our veterans as they depart. And then a special program the Chief has under Colonel Mike Koss that's called Soldier for Life. And within all of that is this cycle of life that we'll have. I'm really proud to be here with you. I'm humbled, in fact, to be with you. I'm super glad that we've got our virtual delegates and they're able to tune in. And I look forward to your questions as we go forward because we want to get the right answer. Thank you very much.
Well, good afternoon. It's my honor and pleasure to be with you today. And General Brooks, General Allen, Ms. Odierno, thank you, Lil, for that very kind introduction. That is a little different. And Patty, thank you for doing that. We all know that no soldier serves alone. Each has a supportive family that makes his or her service possible. I believe the Guard is actually a family as well. Our family history is proud. It's based on shared service and sacrifice. We all know that the military is in a new era right now, an era of very constrained resources. As Director of the Army National Guard, I've made enhancing the Guard's core strengths and character one of our 5 strategic priorities. Central to this effort, we must continue to develop resilient soldiers along with resilient families through resourced, accessible, and effective programs. And that's much easier said than done. As a tag for actually for over 9 years, I learned that having an effective family program made all the difference in the world to our soldiers and our families, and it enhanced our ability to conduct the missions that we needed to conduct when we needed to do them. Whether units are downrange or at home, families really do need this support. If you look back in history a bit, I joined the Army in the early 70s, and in the Guard, there were no family programs. If you were at a post-camp or station, there were all kinds of things, but for the Guard, the weekend duty, and we didn't do that much in the Cold War time period, and we really didn't think about family programs. After or during and after the first Gulf War, family programs popped up, and we had family readiness groups were established, and it was a little slow go actually between after the first Desert War. We had family readiness groups, but it took the conflict in the Balkans and then 9/11 to really bring those family readiness groups to fruition. Family readiness, again, is a key component of soldier readiness. It's not an option, and it is fundamental. In the Guard, most of what is being executed by way of family programs happens at the state level. The National Guard is composed of 54 states, 3 territories, and the District of Columbia, and each organization has their own family programs. We find that a decentralized program allows the states and our adjutants general to adapt their family programs to what best suits their states, their units, and their families. And what works in California doesn't necessarily work in Tennessee, and what works in Hawaii doesn't necessarily work in Maine. So you have to work your programs based on the population, the demographics, and the culture in that particular part of the country. The best practices are developed and then they're shared at the state level among all the states. Family assistance centers, family readiness support assistants, and survivor services coordinators in the states are the primary channels for providing services to the troops and their families. We will continue to resource these assets at the national level so they can continue to deliver critical support at the local level. The Guard is embedded in America's communities. That's where our family program resources are best positioned to support our families, where they live. 406 family assistance centers are located each in a unique community for better access by the dispersed military community of all military branches and components. So the family assistance centers in the National Guard don't only serve National Guardsmen, but they serve soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, as well as the reserve components of all those services for the dispersed community. And we do a lot with recruiting command in the Army, as well as ROTC detachments and others. Family readiness support assistance, and currently there are 312, provide key unit family readiness support to more than 36,000 Army National Guard soldiers. That's 320 brigade and battalion-sized units, and they support family readiness groups of over 4,300 companies and detachments. In FY13, these assistants provided thousands of hours of volunteer training and family resilience training. Family support personnel engage our families through newsletters, websites, yellow ribbon events, face-to-face, group meetings, wellness calls, and family assistance center inquiries and visits to those family assistance centers. They offer soldiers guidance on employment. They make chaplains available through the Strong Bonds program, and they enhance the coping skills of parents and children. Through these programs, the states feel a sense of ownership with their Guard families. The National Guard Bureau helps by making resources and policy guidance. This enables states to tackle the difficulty of caring for our dispersed families and using a lot of common sense and smart, innovative opportunities and approaches to those families. I want to briefly underscore some of the best practices and programs that we want all Guard soldiers and their families to know about. We have crisis action teams. These are state teams composed of behavioral health specialists, SHARP coordinators, and SHARP is sexual harassment, sexual assault response and prevention. So SHARP coordinators, suicide prevention program managers, substance abuse coordinators. And in addition, the states work to synchronize the services of doctors, chaplains, and a range of other professionals that come from the communities where they live and work. Directors of psychological health, and this is one model that I can speak from with a lot of experience from my time as a TAG in North Carolina. The directors of psychological health provide behavioral health assessment and referral services to service members and their families, as well as command consultation. States have expanded on this model to provide one number that is answered 24/7 and connects service members and their families with all the services they're eligible for. And that's really, really important because Guard family members feel pretty isolated when they think about the Army. They know their unit, they know the unit leadership and where they are, but they don't know much about the Army writ large. And to have a number and have a person on the other end of the phone rather than going through a website or a longer, more difficult route really is very comforting to our family members. Many states have established a proven record of success through a buddy-to-buddy support. New Jersey's peer-to-peer program had been such a success that nationally, that now it's managed by the Secretary of Defense and is available to all reserve component members. That's Vets for Warriors. It's a great program that there was some congressional money that went to the state of New Jersey. They developed the program and handed it off at the national level. On the employment front, our Job Connection education program is up and running in 4 states and soon to be more. The program located jobs for more than 1,000 soldiers and spouses in the span of the last year, just operating as a pilot in 4 states. Our overall approach to resilience is very simple. Make it available to families and to youth, not just to soldiers, but the family as a whole. There are some challenges here, and developing responsive programs is, especially in a resource-confined environment, is not all that easy. But it is our obligation as leaders to ensure that civilian and military understand the importance of family programs to our soldiers. And in the Guard, we spend a lot of time working, again, for state resources with the state legislature or assemblies, with the governors. And because the Guard is in each state, each state is a little bit different in the way they handle those resources and the way they support their family programs state by state. And it's no secret right now that family programs in some ways are being considered as an area where cuts can be made and programs consolidated. So we have to pay special attention to that and make sure that, again, post camps and stations for the active Army, you can consolidate some things, but in the Army National Guard, and I know Jeff will talk a few minutes about the Army Reserve, it's a little more difficult with that dispersed population. We have to be careful how much we consolidate. And again, in the Guard, we provide a menu from the National Guard Bureau, and the states pick and choose the programs that work best for them based on their demographics and where they are. A couple of things that have impacted this fairly dramatically: sequestration, the lack of a budget, the government shutdown, all had huge impacts on family programs. And this comes at a time when we still have soldiers deployed in combat in Afghanistan as well as other places around the world. Soldiers have to know that their families are taken care of before we can expect them to perform their missions at peak efficiency. We see this not only with combat deployments, but with deployments for domestic operations as well. And just a couple of weeks ago, the National Guard had about 7,000 soldiers doing domestic operations. And typically we have about 3,000 soldiers every day doing domestic operations somewhere. You know, the floods in Colorado, the fires in Utah and other parts of the West, significant snowstorm. There's still Guard soldiers on state active duty today in South Dakota. They had 47 inches of snow on the 5th of October in a couple of communities, and they're still digging out. And Guard soldiers are using high-wheel vehicles to assist the power companies. They get stuck when they get off the road trying to fix the power lines. There have been some places in South Dakota that haven't had power for 2.5 weeks. So that's just something we do every day, and many people are not aware of that. I often hear that soldiers are rightly concerned about their families. Again, these are soldiers that are doing domestic operations, responding to disasters in their community. And they say, is my family safe while I'm out here doing something for someone else? How can I make sure they're getting all the stuff that they need? And again, the Family Readiness Network and the Family Assistance Centers, as well as family readiness groups, take care of each other, and they do it very well. State family program offices at the Joint Force Headquarters have the lead for a program called Joining Community Forces Initiative within the states. And this is Michelle Obama and Dr. Jill Biden's program about joining forces. Continued reliance on supportive community partners to augment service programs and capabilities is very, very important to us, and that's where Joining Community Forces comes in. That's a national program, but really the states have been doing that at least for the last decade. Emphasis on strengthening existing partnerships to ensure support services are available to soldiers and families are really, really important in this era of declining resources. Again, if we expect soldiers to be at their best, we have to take the worries like this off their plates, from the tactical safety of families during emergencies at home to ensuring that families are cared for during the deployment cycle. Family programs and support is always available. Thank you again for what you do every day for our soldiers. Thank you to family members for the phenomenal support that you've provided to the United States Army and to all of our soldiers, single soldiers, family members, friends of family members, and just everybody for the last decade. It's really, really important. It's been my honor to be with you today, and I look forward to your questions. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Linda and I are excited and happy and delighted to be with you this afternoon. Thank you for coming. I want to set the record straight a little bit with some of the stuff Linda said. First off, I'm not deserving of what she said, but we've been married 32 years. We've had 24 moves in 32 years, and I think she's averaged it up, not in a malicious way, but in a supporting way. 6.5 years I've spent away from the family in those 32 years, and that's because of the up-tempo in the private civilian sector and the military sector. And so she has really been a big supporter of mine and the whole family and the Army at large. And she's a Marine brat. I married into a Marine family, and may her dad rest in peace. He's a retired Master Gunnery Sergeant. I used to just call him Gunny instead of Dad. So we're from a military family, and I just want to thank Linda for all those years of support. I'd like to show you a very short video. I think it's less than 1 minute. Roll the tape.
I'm married, I have 3 daughters. I could be the dad, the husband, then I can go to the fire department, then I can go to the Army Reserve. All 3 of those pieces play off each other. My family is very supportive as I take on and achieve more goals. They're proud. They're proud to stand beside me and say, hey, look what he's doing now. I'm Captain Paul Gonzalez. I'm a combat engineer in the United States Army Reserve.
What I wanted to demonstrate by that short video is that's a great example of what the Army Reserve is all about. A citizen soldier who embodies the warrior mindset and culture, supported by a resilient family, but thoroughly engaged in a civilian occupation and connected to his community and proud to serve the country as a member of the Army Reserve in support of our total Army. In the area of his life support, as well as his civilian sector, they complement each other, and it keeps him in balance. His Army Reserve skills make him a better firefighter. His civilian career supports his family and gives him back to the community and his family right there behind him as he continues to achieve success, both as a member of our armed forces and as a leader in the civilian and community sector. As a husband and a father of 4, and our youngest son has now been in the Army a little over 3 years and spent almost 2 of those years in combat in Afghanistan. Matt comes home in about 3 weeks, and then we'll branch transfer from the Engineer Regiment over to Green Berets. So I know what it's like to be a parent and have one of your children in harm's way. The most important thing that whatever we do, both in the civilian sector and in the military sector, is to know that our family is behind us, and that they have everything they need to succeed and even thrive. That's especially important not only when you're home, but when you're gone. And we're often gone in the reserve component, not just for deployments, but for trying to pursue that civilian position that allows us the opportunity to serve as citizen soldiers. And for those times when soldiers are deployed, whether it's across the country in support of the homeland or across the world, the Army Reserve Family Program is there to provide the help and support that all of us need and to increase the resiliency during the ups and downs that Linda alluded to in military life. There were some handouts that were provided to those that are here in the forum when you came in, and they provide the details of what the Army Reserve has. And we basically have, like the Army and like the Army National Guard, access 24 hours a day to programs and people, real people, that will help you when you're in need. But for now, what I want to do, and I think all of us want to do, is we want to hear from those here in the forum and those that are out there in the virtual forum. And so let's have your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. Thanks so much.
I'll be facilitating the question and answer, and so I think we're going to get some cards that if you have a question, please hold them up high, and we'll have some folks grab them from you. And if you can bring them on up here, we'll get started. Our very handsome Brandon Carter is walking across the stage. Thank you. This question is for Lieutenant General Talley. After 12 plus years of constant deployments, why have some families why have some families struggled under multi-deployments while some have not deployed at all?
Well, that's a great question. In the Army Reserve, we've had all of the Army Reserve has deployed over the last 12 years. But we deploy by units and by guidons and flags, not by individual soldiers. And so what's happened is ARFRGen, the Army Force Generation model that says this is our demand signal on how the Army Reserve supports the Army and the total force, it targets individuals. What happens, though, is our units aren't static. People are moving in and out of units. And in the Army Reserve, you generally don't move in and out of units. It's normally a volunteer thing. You know, people change positions, people get promoted. And so what's happened is, as the units have been fairly balanced on how we've tried to utilize them, sometimes individuals have been deployed more often than not because they left this unit where they just deployed, but then they went to another unit, and the next unit is getting ready to go sooner than the dwell time that we'd like to have. To be frank, the other challenge we have is there's unfortunately the country needed a lot of volunteerism over the last 12 years from Army Reserve, and so Army Reserve troopers have stepped up and volunteered to deploy more than once, more than twice, more than 3 times. Now, sometimes, unfortunately, they don't share that that's a true volunteer deployment with their spouse. I know it's hard to believe, or their civilian employer. And I meet these people and they say, hey, Jeff, I don't understand why my husband Dave has got to do this 3 quite tell the whole truth to his family member, and he didn't quite tell the whole truth to a civilian employer. I have actually done this. When I come across this, I give the soldier a chance to confess, not to me, but to their spouse. I have them call their spouse right in front of me, and then I have them call their employer. But in general, that's the issue. We try to keep it balanced, and in many cases, we try to keep it distributed across the entire Army Reserve Command. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that, although early in the conflict in Iraq, we were spinning pretty fast. But anyway, I'll stop there and see if there's any follow-on questions about that issue.
Thank you. This one is for General Ferreter. In reviewing your slide deck, I noticed that ACS is not mentioned, and neither is family advocacy. Please explain why these valuable programs might not have been on your slide.
As we make this slide, we are often told what's not on it, and whether or not we're going to throw something else on the slide. In this town, everyone really wants to see their name on the slide because it's usually indicative of a guarantee of fully funded. So there are programs. There's about 24 programs listed there. There's about 69 programs in the Ready Resilient campaign that are being funded. Army Community Services is fully funded and is not going away, and it's valued by, we the deliverer of this service. It's valued by our family members, and its outcomes are key and essential. But you'll see that programs like EFMP that are on there are from Army Community Service. So try not to list the organization. But really, see, the idea is we don't know why someone's drinking too much. Was it the deployment? Was it multiple back-to-back deployments? Was it financial hardship? Or did they get into financial hardship because they're substance abuse? Or was there an issue coming out of theater that needs to be worked with, and that's what's leading to substance abuse? So the thought is those programs are a network, and we've all grown up in these last 10 to 12 years of saying when you got a really complex problem, and you pull on it, a lot of things are going to move in the spider web. So let's set up these kind of ideas so that as we take on several aspects of the complex problem, we're going to get it solved. And so we've divested or pulled out and called up many of the programs in order to say, well, maybe the Surgeon General's embedded health down at the unit level where it's needed allows the soldier to come forward with confidentiality and say, I have an issue, and my issue is this, relationship-wise, or this, substance abuse-wise, or maybe it has to do with career progression. And so the idea of the slide is that working together, these are the kind of things that we're going to find a way to take care of folks. And then, you know, we think we have an awesome Army that's really strong. And so if there's 500,000 soldiers out there in the active component, and there's about 22,000 in the integrated disability side of the Army, then really we got about 475,000 that we also have to provide the attention and move ourselves forward. And General Odierno talks to all the senior leaders about, hey, we got to deal with today, but we got to talk about and make a great Army of tomorrow. So no intent to slight anybody on anything that's left off. Family advocacy, we talk every single week. The family advocacy program, the AFAP program is still alive and well. But we talk every single week with regard to SHARP that there's so many things that can happen on an installation or off an installation. And it could be a teenage youngster, that boy or girl, who's assaulted, and now you're into AFAP or Army Family Advocacy, or it could be a soldier who falls in love with a 17-year-old, and now you're into it, and all that. So each of those programs is dear to us. And then we've all three mentioned that we're not turning our back on Army family programs and the care for all of our soldiers' family members. But at the same time, we're going to do what's right in terms of the relevant programs and those that deliver and are taking care of the problems of suicide, sexual assault, substance abuse, and the like. And then there are some that you're going to see the way they're delivered, it's going to be a little different. And so you may alert on, it looks like that's a big change, when in fact, often it's just a different method of delivery. Thank you.
Thank you. This one is for General Ingram, Lieutenant General Ingram. It's from a proud California Army National Guard spouse. And it says, the recent government shutdown and furloughs hit the National Guard and reserves particularly hard, and especially the families of dual-status federal technicians who are full-time soldiers supporting our reserve forces. Many of these families already endured furloughs under sequestration and then were forced into another era of economic uncertainty when the furloughs hit this time. What plans, if any, does the senior leadership have to address the continuing impact these budget constraints have had and will continue to have on our reserve families who often don't live near a military installation where support services might be available to them? And then also, are there any plans in place to exempt these soldiers and families from future furloughs should their brothers and sisters in the active duty Army be exempt?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Furloughs for non-dual status technicians, or rather for dual status technicians, have been a problem from the very beginning. Just to define a dual status technician, that's a soldier who works full-time for the Army National Guard or the Army Reserve is very similar. And as a condition of employment has to be a member of the Guard and be in a unit. And that's the dual status. They're a civil service technician paid on a government pay scale, very similar to a DA civilian, but as a condition of employment, they have to be a member of the Guard. They're considered civilians by the powers that be and by the, in this case, Department of Justice ruled on the recent government shutdown who was a civilian and who was in the military. So the Pay the Military Act didn't cover dual status technicians. It's very unfortunate. It's a quirk in the way law is written and statutes are written. They're very definitely military families. They wear a uniform, typically wear a uniform to work every day. And hopefully, and I know General Grass and I and others have made members of Congress very much aware. There are 30,000 dual status technicians in the Army National Guard, and they have been adversely affected. Fortunately, in the government shutdown, they're going to be retroactively paid. They were not paid during the summer for the sequestration furloughs. They were not paid for 7 days of furlough time during that time, but they will be retroactively paid for the government shutdown recently.
Lieutenant General Farrader, you're next up, and this is from a virtual delegate. And her question is, with the substantial drawdown of troops anticipated, what is being done to incorporate spouses in the separation process? Are there any plans to include them in ACAP-type briefings so they can better understand and be aware of the challenges their soldiers will face and learn ways to assist and support their soldiers during this process?
I'm more comfortable standing anyways.
Yep.
I'm not going to talk there, but so the answer is yes. In Army Community Services and in the transition, the new ACAP program, spouses can go along with their husbands and participate. We have a slide. I have a little cloud up there called transition, and so what that means is a full, all-in effort by the Army to ensure that all soldiers 1 year out, 1 year prior to ending time in service or retirement, will attend a week-long seminar. Fully funded at this point for us to have set up at all the Army installations the ability for classrooms ranging between 30 people and 50. And so if Fort Hood has 250 people leaving a month, then we've got 3, 4, or 5 classrooms and counselors there. When they go through that, the first thing they'll learn is what their VA benefits are. They'll learn where on the Department of Labor websites and the like, and jobs are cited. They'll learn how it is that they'll transition, what Army benefits they'll get. They'll practice writing resumes. They'll practice dressing for success and doing interviews. And then the spouse to participate in that. We've linked that in 2 ways. We've linked that to job fairs or hiring fairs. Last year, under the great leadership of the Command Sergeants Major of IMCOM and the Command Sergeants Major at the division, corps, and brigade level, we've turned the tide on the job interviews, so we don't just have rooms full of kiosks and kiosk people, but instead you come to a hiring fair, you come with jobs. And so in some places, the night before, there's actually a meet and greet with the employers who are coming, and a chance for them to see our great soldiers. Our non-commissioned officers have taken this to the next level, and they're almost preparing them as they go through transition and afterwards like a promotion board or Soldier of the Month board. So there's a heck of a lot of positive energy on it. And then we're able now through my G3 in San Antonio, my great team there with my G1 team, that if someone hands General Allen a business card and says, I think I can get 700 jobs in this part of the country, you get that business card to me, to our guys in San Antonio, to your garrison commander. You get that business card to the Army G1 and General Howard Bromberg and his team, or you get that business card out to Soldier for Life. We've got a fusion cell, and then we can advertise and post those. And then finally, if you're in Grafenwehr, Germany, and you want a job somewhere near Fort Hood, when Fort Hood does their job fairs and hiring fairs, they have virtual interviews and virtual hiring going on. So bigger than your question of can spouses be a part of it? Absolutely. And then what else is going on with regard to that? And the answer is this: we're going to make America better by having our soldiers out there and our Army families out there. And so we're going to invest in that. And then not only is it just the last event before they get their clearing papers, but it's far enough out that they actually can go to several of these hiring fairs and really refine their skills. There's a bunch of apprentice hiring fair apprenticeships that are out there. Joint Base Lewis McChord is one of about 10 people where a soldier, while still on active duty, goes through a 12 or 14 week at the employer's expense, and then he goes out as a carpenter or pipe fitter and stuff like that. Thanks, Patty.
Thanks, sir. General Talley, this one's for you. Will Army Reserve Camps, AREC, if I said that right, come back for 2014? And it's from one of our virtual delegates in San Antonio.
Thank you for the question. Unless, sometimes things change every day, but as of today, as of right now, my budget for 14 isn't significantly different than it was for 13. And which means I'm not going to have to reduce or change any of the family programs to include the camp programs and the young people's programs that we have in the Army Reserve. So the short answer is, right now, I'm not seeing any change forecast for 14. After 14, I'm not sure, to be frank. It's going to depend upon what budget the General Odierno and the Army Reserve ends up having based upon decisions of the Congress and the executive branch. But as of right now, 14 looks pretty good. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
Thank you. And this is for both of the reserve component generals. If reservists or guardsmen don't step up and volunteer, what will happen?
Everyone that serves today and since 1973 volunteered to join the military. So I'm not sure if that's the question, or if the question is volunteer to deploy. And recruiting, I think, is generally, in general terms, we're recruiting all the soldiers that we need to recruit. Recruiting is going actually very, very well. Soldiers are deciding to re-enlist and continue their service. So
all volunteer Army, and it's proven to be remarkably resilient and capable, all three components, since it was instituted. From the Army Reserve perspective, the way that I think we can continue to have volunteers, whether it's volunteers to come into the Army Reserve, enlistment or direct commission or through ROTC, is by me making sure that when you join the Army Reserve, as I said last year, so I'm going to be consistent, is if you join the Army Reserve, I'm going to make you more marketable to yourself, to your family member, to your civilian employer, and I'm not going to worry about the Army. Because if I get those first three, I guarantee I got a better soldier. And we're doing that through our Employers Partnership Program, which now is transforming into the Private-Public Partnership Initiative of the Army Reserve. And I would be happy to talk to you about that. We're going to be revealing that on the Army Reserve's birthday this spring, but it's all about helping our families and our soldiers really develop careers in the civilian sector that complement what they do in the Army Reserve. And that's where I'm putting all of my emphasis, because if our future solutions require the government to give me more resources and money, it's game over. That's not a good plan. So I'm leveraging the private sector relationships that we have in the Army Reserve, since most of our formation is actually in the private sector. And I'm extremely excited and confident that that's going to create more volunteerism in the Army Reserve.
Thank you. General Farrader, you're up next. How does IMCOM expect to maintain or sustain the Army Family Covenant throughout the garrisons?
Full speed. I would differ with what General Talley said just a little bit. I think we're going to challenge ourselves to do it better, to deliver more precisely. We're going to challenge ourselves not to waste a penny. And so You know, I've been to Fort Benning a couple times. If you're out there, how you doing? And I'll say, you know, do we need a new bass boat every year or not? Because, so wherever we save money on any part of the Army, we turn it back to readiness for our soldiers who are going to go downrange. And so we're going to be very, very critical of what we look at. That said, I'll bet you won't be able to tell that there's a difference, and you will think that it's been enhanced. Across the MCOM world, you know, it doesn't cost a penny to make an Army family member feel like $1 million. And so our customer service, our positive attitude, and then our follow-through when someone walks in is as much of what we do as anything else. Our programs are fully funded. And that said, if we're buying something that we don't need, you know, if we have 7 right fielders and no shortstop, we're going to reorganize our workforce. And last year we reorganized our workforce without any RIF. And we got jobs for our civilian employees, and we took about 5,000 civilians and reshaped. About 2,200 we hired. And so at a time when the Army was not hiring at all, and with a hiring freeze. So we've been successful in slowly and surely shifting our fighting stance to take care of families so that today's contemporary issues are addressed. And I put that slide up on purpose because I'm not going to be authorized to cancel family programs. There's 3 people right there that I show all the time that are the ones. And the customers are you, and the customers are the commanders and first sergeants, and the sergeant majors and commanders, and these great commanding generals. So I'm really confident that we're going to be in a good place this year and next.
This is, I would say, a follow-on question, but it's from one of our virtual delegates named Catherine. And she says, sir, that you mentioned a possible new delivery method for family programs. Would you be able to give an example?
Well, let me think. What's the best example? Let me say. In some cases, we took some tough decisions with the family readiness assistance, and we shifted them to the deploying units, and then we're ready as a unit comes into the hopper to take care. And so that means we're asking volunteerism to come back in those cases. And across the board in child youth services, we've redone the training level. Taken to task to ensure that we got the right people at the right place, and then upgun the curriculum that the children are getting in there. I don't know. Let me ask. I've got a team there. What's another example of change in method for delivery? Anybody? Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, so Sergeant Major's saying, you know, in the past, you might have a person that's a precise specialist in an Army community service program, and now that person has a portfolio where they can do 4 or 5 or 6. You know, the other thing is, a bigger idea is a partnership with others who can deliver it for us. And so in many cases, where if you have the ability to partner with the folks in the Chamber of Commerce and all of that, then the skills of our force are to reach out, find a private partnership, and then bring that onto the installation as well.
We're going to ask one final question because I know General Ferrer needs to leave at 2:30. And so this one is for everyone, so we'll kind of go down the line. But since you spoke last, General Ferrer, we'll let you rest just a little bit, and we'll start with General Talley. It says, a lot of focus has been on support for families of deployed soldiers. How do you see the shift of focus support for families in garrison? What is the difference? How will it be different?
Well, I guess I don't see that in the Army Reserve, because our support for family doesn't change whether you're deployed or whether you're not deployed. We try to provide the same level of support all the time. The challenge for us is actually very different. I don't have installations, and so it's a virtual installation. And so when I made my comment about private-public sector, it's because for me, my family programs is a small part of how I help families. The employer partnership program and the private-public partnership, that's all an Army Reserve funded initiative to help the family programs. And that I got to make sure that they're okay with their civilian employer, and if they're okay with their civilian employer, then I don't need to worry so much about, whether they're going to stay as a soldier or not. So I guess in the Army Reserve, I don't see it as an issue. We certainly make sure that the priority of government resourcing for family programs would go towards those units that are deploying, absolutely. But we don't do that at the expense of the other units. Again, the Army Reserve is only 5.8% of the Army's total budget and 20% of the force. So we're always, we're always working with limited resources. That's why I made the comment I said is we can get lots of help from the private sector because it's a different relationship than you would have in the active component in Compo 1. So I guess my argument would be is it doesn't change. It's the same level of support all the time.
And I'll have to agree with Jeff. The difference in what Jeff just said for the Army Reserve writ large is very similar, but it's really in the 54 states, territories, in the district, because each one of those entities leverages local and state support to work through the programs and to get additional support that they need. We're never fully funded on anything. Typically, the resources come based on the number of soldiers that are units that are deployed. As we get out of the deployment cycle and things slow down in Afghanistan, we'll probably have to look at another formula for providing resources to family programs. But again, we get a lot of leverage from the civilian community around our soldiers.
Sir?
I'll end where I started with the idea that the Ready and Resilient campaign is focused on the families and on the soldiers and on our civilian workforce. And with regard to that, as well as now we know what we're going to do and how we can do it, it's a cultural change that says we, the Army, are back, still fighting a war, still going to send people off, and we have people staying at our installations longer. And so leaders no longer are going to be solely focused on, golly, I got just enough time to rest myself and then get my guys and girls ready to go to war again. No, it's every leader's responsibility to take care of the families that are a part of their team. And that culture change to say, many have said, and who's going to solve this problem for all these Army families? Look in the mirror. If you're an Army leader, you're part of the solution. If you're an Army spouse, you're part of the solution because those are our guys, those guys are your guys, those families are yours. And so the great emphasis that the senior leaders in the Army have put on this campaign is to let everyone know, hey, if you want to call yourself the best leader in the Army, be the best at warfighting, be the best at preparing to go, and be the best at taking care and understanding the programs that are available and get your folks to the place they need to be, because leaders and chains of command will make it happen, and those service providers who are responsible to give a consistent delivery are teamed up together, and I think that's a good thing.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, so very much. Can we please give them a round of applause? We had some great questions, and I'm sorry that we didn't get to all of them, but all of the questions will be answered, and you'll be able to find the answers on our Facebook page following the week of the annual meeting. Thank you very much. Okay, we're not going to actually take a break right now. We're going to have a wonderful little video presentation that's only going to be about 10 minutes, and then we're going to let you take a break as we get to introduce Linda Dennis, who many of you know from Backpack Journalists, because they have been very, very busy this summer, and they have actually put together an incredible film for a wonderful museum in Chicago area. So without any ado, let me introduce Linda Dennis, who will explain what the Backpack Journalists have been up to.
Thank you all. Patty, to all of you present, senior spouses, General Talley, thank you all. And I'd like to send a special hello right now to Chicago area military kids and teachers, members of Junior ROTC of the Chicago Public Schools, military youth and backpackers from Atlanta, from Fort Benning, from Colorado Springs, to park rangers at Fluorescent Fossil Beds National Monument, Fluorescent, Colorado. Now, have we tweaked your interest now? As we enter our fourth year, Backpack Journalist curriculum has a hands-on workshop focus on helping military youth find their voice through creative expression and with our subject tracks, which range from reporting and writing to photography and filmmaking. And our interns, after they take our program, they've been asking for more. So we do something called Cover the Assignment. Nothing like a boots-on-the-ground experience to help these young people find their way. Plus, listening and writing is always a necessary skill for any career choice. The assignment can range from interviewing a public figure or attending a public event. And as last year at AUSA, you saw us with a bunch of kids. Well, unfortunately, this year, we had sequestration, we had a government shutdown, and the kids didn't get to come, but they're out there. I'm sorry you're not here, guys. You're getting ready. We've had this year of real-world experiences. I mentioned budget. I mentioned sequestration. However, thanks to the backpackers who were here last year, we were able to secure several grants. And you're getting ready to see the outcomes of these projects. At each grant location, we used our curriculum and a hands-on workshop and real-world experiences and a venue that provided us with multiple stories to gather and report and photograph, and amazing learning opportunities beyond our traveling classroom. And guess what happened next? We now are in the book business. These books are written by youth, for youth, aligned to Common Core. We've had educators look at them, and Amazon just accepted them. So your kids are not only coming to our workshops, but they're also now book writers and authors. And the sales of these books go to continue to support our program on the national level without federal funds. These workshops were open to all military kids, and sir, some of your Army Reserve kids were with us in Chicago and at Fluorescent. They became reporters and gatherers. The outcomes that you're going to see include our portfolio books with articles, stories, interviews, photographs by the backpackers, and then with the help of educators, like we said, we've added the lesson plans, excuse me, that are aligned to standards and the Common Core. Each book has a QR code. Now, if you know what a QR code is, the kids will tell you if you don't already know. I'll tell you what they are. In our books, we have these codes that when the teacher in the classroom scans them, it takes them to the web. So not only do we have a digital book in print, they can go to the web to see our movies. Really cool stuff. The kids love doing it because they're so tech savvy. They showed us how to do it. Imagine this. You are a youth in South Dakota, perhaps in the Virgin Islands, and you get our book and you read about Robert R. McCormick and his legacy and his support of the First Amendment. You see General George Washington. You can scan the QR code and find an interview with Eric Gillespie, the curator of the McCormick Research Center, or Bill Brewster's sharing of some of the 15,000 artifacts that they have in the 1st Division's museum. That's Big Red One. They were formed in 1917, and we can't thank the 1st Division Museum enough for what they did for us while we were there in Chicago. It was amazing. You can even hear the colonel speaking, which was a kick to be able to walk through the MRC and realize they have his recordings. You can meet General George Washington. So history comes alive at Cantigny. And in just a minute, you're going to see a movie trailer that we have built. And keep your fingers crossed, we've just pitched the military channel. We want them to show what these kids have done. Next, you're going to also know about nature's storytelling with fossils. Can you imagine? Fossils. And here I thought I knew what a fossil was. I had no clue. It was a book of science and adventure. The science was shared with us by the park rangers and the paleontologists at Fluorescent. And what an adventure. This was funded for us by the Friends of Fluorescent Fossil Beds in Colorado Springs. Military youth from the Colorado Springs area, and a lot of Army Reserve kids, by the way, who transferred from Chicago just in time to take our workshop in Colorado Springs. They participated and learned, as I did, about the Earth's formation 34 million years ago. Redwood trees sitting in Colorado that when today they're only found in California. And then there was a paleontology lab filled with shale, with wasp and leaves that tell the name of a tree. By the edges, the leaves on the edges tell you that, and the climate on the Earth from millions of years ago. Imagine that a leaf fossil was found at Fluorescent from a tree that today only grows in Africa. At Fluorescent Fossil Beds National Monument, we learned that it was this national park, and this is important, and the rangers are watching right now. Those park rangers are paying attention. They piloted the Poster Parks program that support the military family, and we met the guys that did it, and I can't tell you how much it meant to spend time with them. We also met the ranger who writes songs and has published a CD that encourages children to visit our national parks. And did I mention Senator Mark Udall showed up? And boy, did we have fun with him. And his advice, which was pretty cool, be sure you find the time once in your life to sleep under the stars. The content for each of our portfolio books, History Comes Alive, a backpack journalist educational portfolio book, are written by youth for youth. We are paying it forward and sharing our learning adventure at each venue. And like I said earlier, we are also offering these books for sale in order to keep our paying it forward to continue, with the Friends of Fluorescent Fossil Beds receiving the donation and the Continue Park Foundation to help us support our return in 2014. Now, I'd like to turn your attention to the screen where Hannah, a backpacker from Fort Benning, will be joining us. Hannah? I think we need audio. She does talk.
Valuable lessons there, and I gained so much insight. Not only did backpackers get the opportunity to interview the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dempsey, but we also conducted over 70 interviews of volunteers on the floor. Backpackers also had the chance to interview Kathy Hamilton and Floyd Hammer, who were the founders of the program Outreach, and they recently received the 5,000th Daily Point of Light Award at the White House. It was so great to be able to talk to them because it means so much to me as a volunteer. I mean, I gained so much insight just talking to them, and it inspired me to do more in my community and reach out. So when I help others, I can also help myself. And now I'd like to introduce another project Backpack worked on this past summer, which was from a grant from the McCormick Foundation, a photojournalist workshop for military kids. Miss Dennis visited Cantini Park and saw the historical relevance to our nation's history there. Backpack then added filmmaking to the workshop, and as a result today, you're going to see a movie trailer of History Comes Alive at Cantini and the 1st Division Museum and Freedom Express. And just so you know, there's a book that goes along with the movie that's a virtual tour with the backpackers. It includes a QR code for the movie online and a lesson plan for the teachers. This way, other youth across America can join in and learn about our nation's history. And they can meet George Washington and tour with him. Please enjoy the video, and I hope you like it.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to history, everybody. Here's your chance to learn about the past And maybe by learning from the past, you can make a better future for our country. For you are the building blocks of our future. I have laid the groundwork for you so that you can make a better life for yourselves today. First, let's begin here with this traveling museum. Back in my day, well, we traveled by horse and wagon and carried our important papers in pouches on horseback, which was called saddlebags. Now, let's go inside this wonderful museum and see the wonderful things that we have for you. And maybe we can understand history better. Thank you. Hey. Welcome to Freedom Express, everybody.
Put on these headphones. You can hear what they say. In fact, here's you.
That's right. There's me.
No,
But that's an older version of me. That's
You wanted to
no,
hear what
it's
you-
okay. I'm
okay.
fine. Yeah, I like, there's some painting. Look at that painting. Wow.
Those are moving. They're
Oh,
called.
it's 1730. 1732. I had the wrong date. I couldn't remember. Oh, that's Article 1 of the Constitution. I apologize.
Yeah, you can read it down
Yeah,
here.
oh yeah. Wow.
And then you can read it.
That was all written by quill pen, you know. Yeah.
Must have taken a lot of time.
Oh, yes, it does. They had clerks. They would write it out, and every state got a copy. Now that we learned about the creation of our Constitution and its freedoms, let's learn about the people and the events that have protected those freedoms that the Constitution established. We're going to go now, come along with me. We're going to go to see what else Cotigny Park has to offer everybody. And there are a lot of good things to see here. Come on, guys, let's go. Look at the beautiful flowers they plant every year. This park has this enormous greenhouse where they grow wonderful flowers, so they plant them every year. Here's our chance to see the events that protected our freedom. Come on, everybody, let's go see. Come on, let's go. Yay! Oh, these don't. This is all about Colonel McCormick, the gentleman that made this all possible. He was a colonel in the First World War, and this was his estate when he came home, and this is where he lived, but eventually he created this area, this museum. So if you want to see different things about him, usually they take pictures of special occasions. Well, these are the different special occasions that McCormick was involved in. There you go. And you can read exactly what was there and a little bit more about McCormick. We are so lucky today. We have the manager in charge of exhibits that's going to show you something very unusual called a landing craft. So this lady will now, named by name Terry, will take you and show you this wonderful exhibit.
What we're going to see is the landings at Normandy Beach. This is D-Day, the first division where our museum is dedicated to, landed on Omaha Beach. Now, if you look here, everything started here in Great Britain. All our troops were stationed here, and they had to go across the English Channel into France. Now, if you look at this, one of the things that's really difficult about this invasion is this is what's called an amphibious assault. Have you guys ever heard that term?
Land and water.
Land and water. A frog is an amphibious animal, so it's got to go land and water.
We got a special treat. We're in a place where not normally people come, And we're going to introduce you to the gentleman, the curator, that takes care of all this wonderful stuff, because paper does deteriorate. And he has to make sure that nothing gets destroyed, and he also has to find new things. And Eric Gillespie.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Welcome to the Research Center. My name's Eric Gillespie. I'm the director, and I oversee the operations here. And what we have here are the items relating to Colonel Robert R. McCormick, whose estate you're visiting today. And we also have paper items regarding the history of the 1st Infantry Division. We have recordings of the Colonel.
So you're familiar with the recordings of the Colonel, then?
Yes, yes, and we have a few examples of those recordings, and he would give a great deal of speeches during the intermission, and they would not resume the show until the Colonel was finished. They would never cut him off.
That makes sense.
Back in December of 1941,
Could that be the
our
Colonel
Navy
talking?
had so little appreciation of air attack.
My name is Jared Keener. I'm the exhibit specialist here at the museum. So I'm responsible for putting together all of our temporary exhibits, and I'm making updates to our permanent exhibit hall. And so we do a temporary exhibit every summer that's open from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And this summer, the exhibit we have is called Faces of the First. And it tells the story of 17 different soldiers who have served with the 1st Division since World War I. So it's broken, grouped by conflict. So we have World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, the Cold War. We have a section called the 1990s, which covers Desert Storm and then the Balkans. And then we have a section on Iraq and Afghanistan.
Do you have a favorite soldier from the Faces of the First exhibit?
My favorite soldier in the Faces of the First exhibit is Jody Schroeder. She's the nurse who served with the division in Iraq.
Okay, we have a wonderful display outside in the lobby about the American Revolution. We have some paintings, copies of paintings, and clothing, and wonderful things that you could try on, and actually you can make things too. So would you come with me and I'll show you how to have a good time. Come on.
Perfect.
Where do you put the feather?
He's also got a bayonet. The reason why you don't have a bayonet out here, we don't get hurt. Okay, now, next thing you put on is your cartridge box, which goes on your right side. All right. Next thing to put on is your bayonet. There you go.
Left side or right side?
That's fine. That's perfect.
There you go. Let's take a picture. We work to bring the material here to the museum that we then use to create the exhibits. Now, there's two components to the collections. There's the three-dimensional artifacts. That's what we have in this side. And then there's the two-dimensional. There's the flat portions of it. And that's what Eric protects and preserves and documents on the archive side of everything. So we work to bring both those types of materials into the museum. And we work with individual donors. Sometimes we work with families. Other times we work with units. We work with the 1st Infantry Division or the brigades and the regiments and the companies within the division to see that we can collect the objects that start with the history of the division in World War I and go all the way up through the current conflict. Now, how many objects do you think that we have here? What would be a guess? What do you think?
Like a million.
A million would be really a lot. I wish we had a million objects, but I don't know where we would put a million objects. Yeah, what do you think?
1,986.
Wow, that is a really, really specific number. That's an amazingly specific number, but it's a little too low. We're between those two. We're right at about 15,000 objects.
What do you do here?
I'm the curator of collections for the 1st Division Museum.
Nice.
What thing in the museum do you enjoy seeing the most?
I enjoy,
Or anything in the museum?
well, I enjoy all the objects that we have. And as my job as a curator, objects are really important to what I do, and that's what I seek from the different donors we work with.
First, I want to thank you for letting me spend my day with you. Really, again, I'm really thankful. And I hope that the experience that you enjoyed today because you really had some really great experiences. Some experiences that other people would never have seen. So I want to say goodbye to everybody and have a wonderful summer, what's left of it, because I know school is right around the corner. So thank you so much. Bye, everybody. Bye. Bye.
Hey, George, are you real or are you a guy in a costume?
Thank you all. That was pulled together from 8 hours of footage. There's a lot more, and we're cutting it down so teachers can use it in the classroom to 10 to 15-minute breaks. These are great kids, all of them. They wrote about it. They did it all without a script in hand. Thank you, McCormick Foundation, First Division Museum, and AUSA. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to take a break, and we will be joined by the Secretary of the Army, the Chief of Staff of the Army, and the Sergeant Major of the Army. As soon as they arrive, they're en route from the Pentagon, so we're excited about having them join us in a little bit. So please take a break and enjoy some of the food. All right, thank you so much for taking your seats so quickly. We truly appreciate it. It is now time for our Senior Leaders Town Hall, and I'm sure all of you are very anxious to get started and share your concerns and your questions with our Senior Army leaders. I did want to just let our Senior Army leaders know that besides the in-house audience, we have 70 virtual forum sites across the country with an anticipated 1,200 virtual forum delegates that are going to be viewing this forum today and hoping that we'll get lots of questions. So without further ado, please let me introduce to you your Senior Army leadership. The Secretary of the Army, John M. McHugh. Come on up. The Chief of Staff of the Army, General Ray Odierno. And the Sergeant Major of the Army, Sergeant Major of the Army, Raymond Chandler. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here. I also now would like to bring up a very, very special family. If I could get the Family of the Year to come up, the Flores family, please. And if I can have Ms. Chandler and Mrs. Odierno come up on stage as well. You all met the Flores family this morning at the opening ceremonies, but we always like to do a special recognition of our Family of the Year here at the Family Forums. This year, it was First Sergeant Tommy Flores and his wife and children that were nominated by the Fort Bliss chapter, and which is in El Paso, Texas, for those of you that might not know. Yay, Fort Bliss. Yay, Fort Bliss. And what the chapter wrote, this is just a little snippet of what they wrote, was when First Sergeant Flores and his wife wanted to place their special needs child to be involved in athletics, they turned to the Miracle League as an answer to their prayers. The Miracle League is an organization that provides children with mental and or physical challenges an opportunity to play baseball as a team member in an organized league. The Miracle League depends solely on the support of volunteers, and First Sergeant Flores and his family dived in to give back. First Sergeant Flores serves as the team coach, providing instruction on hitting, fielding, and running bases. He is also in charge of coordinating coaches' meetings, drafting the game schedules, all the while taking college courses and holding down the demanding position of Battery First Sergeant of Alpha 243 Battalion, 11th ADA Brigade. Hooah! All told, the Flores family regularly contributes over 30 hours each month to the Miracle League. Laura holds the position of team mom and acts as the assistant coach while coordinating fundraising events to fund team uniforms. And if that isn't enough, she serves as the family readiness group leader for her husband's unit and for the El Paso Rescue Mission. Carlos, their 10-year-old son, serves as an angel in the outfield, assisting his sister Sanaya and other players while catching and running the bases and playing at games and also helping with practices. And Sanaya, who receives so much from the Miracle Leave, also volunteers, like her mother and brother. Sanaya volunteers at the El Paso Rescue Mission. Ladies and gentlemen, the AUSA Volunteer Family of the Year. And we have a special little gift to provide the family, just some little fun things for you all to enjoy when you go back to your hotel room. And we want to make sure that we thank Express Scripts, who was our gold level sponsor, and also Health Net, our bronze level sponsors, for their generosity in helping us bring the family to AUSA. Thank you again.
Sir, pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, without further ado, please let me introduce again Secretary McHugh.
Thank you, Patty. Can you hear me? I've flipped the little green light and it tells me I'm broadcasting. I hope that's true. Let me just open with a few comments. I think the value of these kinds of events, certainly to us, is the knowledge and the information we receive from all of you rather than just talking at you for the period that we have together. But having said that, after 25 years in elective office, I'm still a recovering politician, and I got to give a little bit of a speech. First of all, I want to add my words of congratulations to the Flores family, the first sergeant, his wife Lauren. As you saw, and if those of you who were with us this morning, you heard to some extent the amazing things they do. Maybe the most amazing thing about it is they're awfully typical of the families that we are blessed by in this Army today. So thanks to them again, and best wishes. The other thanks is, of course, to Patty, to AUSA, for the opportunity that they've provided in each of the 5 years I've had the honor to be here to have these kinds of outreach activities. Not just the folks in this room, but also those at the outstations who, just like all of our Army families, are out there doing great things and serving. You know, you've heard it probably 24 times today. You've heard it, golly, how many times no one knows in your time as a part of an Army family, that we use that phrase a whole lot. And we use it a whole lot because it truly means something to us. But if it is going to be more than a bumper sticker, it's something, as I mentioned this morning in my comments, that we have to work at each and every day. And once more, I think that's why these occasions hold such value. And like the word family to many people, it's got a number of different understandings. The first, of course, is the traditional military family of soldiers standing next to soldiers, having each other's back, never leaving a fallen comrade behind, that kind of esprit de corps that truly is family-oriented amongst our uniform ranks. But like every family in America, it's the traditional definition as well, and the ones that all of you probably most closely represent. moms and dads, brothers and sisters, folks and spouses who care about their loved ones in uniform, and obviously, like every family, have certain needs and certain requirements that we feel very strongly is our responsibility to help to provide. Most spouses I've talked to as I'm out traveling across every camp, post, and station, first concern isn't about how long maybe the library will be open. It's, you better make awfully sure that you provide my soldier, my loved one, with the kind of training, with the kind of equipment, with everything they need to go out and to do the mission, to do it well, to do it safely, and to come back home. And when you're at war especially, as we continue to be, that's all of our responsibility, and it's something I want you to know we take very seriously. And as I mentioned this morning, whatever else happens, we're not going to send soldiers into harm's way who don't have everything they need, who don't have the training. But something we've learned since the all-volunteer force in the 1970s, we've transitioned to become largely a family force as well. And we have a moral imperative, a moral obligation to make sure we're doing everything we can within our needs, our available means, I should say, to provide for those families. Over the last 7 years, we've doubled the amount of money we've spent on family programs, starting about $600 million to now about $1.2, $1.1 billion going forward. We think we've done a lot of good. But the times, as you've heard time and time again, are changing. Not because so much we wish them to, but the Congress and others have decided that our budgets are going to be reduced. And so now it's important not that we abandon the family programs, but rather that we work with all of you to make sure we make the best possible choices. So that perhaps we can find some programs that you either don't understand or you don't find particularly helpful. Perhaps we can restructure or even reduce them, taking the savings and placing them against other programs that you do value. Now, to do that successfully, we really need the information from you. We need your input as to what works for you and what doesn't. I'll tell you, don't let us do this in a vacuum in the Pentagon. We're going to have to change. We're going to have to make decisions on resourcing, hard decisions. And absent your input, we'll make those decisions, but I know very, very, very confidently that doing it by ourselves is not the way to go about it, and the quality of the product we'll produce will not be what it should be if we have your guidance and your leadership. So obviously your being here speaks very strongly to your concern, and we deeply appreciate all that you do, not just today, not just this week during AUSA, but every single day as a vital member of that Army family. So thank you, God bless you, and Army strong. And I'll turn it over to the Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Is my mic on? I think so, good. First, as I go around and I speak, I always end with a certain phrase, and one of that is the strength of our soldiers is our families. And I say that for a very specific reason, because I know that for our soldiers to be able to do the things we need them to do and we ask them to do, they need the full support of their families. And that means we have to understand that, especially with an all-volunteer force. So when I see a family like the Flores family, it motivates me, because they represent, in a lot of ways, what we're about. We always talk about, and the Secretary touched on it, you know, we have two families when you're in the Army. You have your biological family and you have your Army family. And when I see a family like the Floreses who have committed themselves to their own family, but they've also committed themselves to their fellow soldiers and their families. And that's who we are. That's who we've been for a very long time. But we have to do more than just rely on the good graces of our family members and all the volunteers and our communities that support us. We also have to meld that with our programs that we need in our Army. It takes both. The Army could never fund the great volunteer work and support that we get from so many. but we can fund very important programs that are what we think we need as we move forward. And as we are with everything else in the Army, we're in a time of transition. We're transitioning out of 12 years of war, which put stress on our families, but also brought about a significant amount of resources to help our families. As we transition now, this is a very important time because we cannot forget our families. We're going to have less resources, but in reality, I believe this is probably the most important time that we have to continue to touch our families. As they have gone through 12 years of deployments. And it's not only our young soldiers, it's our leaders, our non-commissioned officers and our officers who have been on 3, 4, 5 deployments, who we have to make sure that they are prepared and able to continue to serve, and that their families have what they need so they can continue to grow as a family. Because if our families grow, then we grow as an Army. For me, being a father of 3 kids who grew up in the Army, there's nothing more important than investing in our children and making sure that they have all of the resources and capabilities for them to become not only productive citizens, but ones who contribute back to our nation. There's nothing more important than contributing back into the youth of our nation. It's important that we continue to have programs in place that help our soldiers to become better soldiers, more resilient soldiers, and our families become more resilient families. It's important that we identify those programs, as the Secretary said, that are the best programs. You have to help us to do that. You have to do it through the forums that we put in place for families. We have to do it through the chain of command. We have to do it through senior mission commanders. We have to do it through installation management command. But we have to really make sure that we're focusing our dollars that we have in the right place. It still is a top priority, and the money that we're going to spend on families says it's a top priority. But it's not the amount of money that we once had. And so it's important for us to understand what we need to do as we move forward. It's important that we design our programs that reaches out to our reserve component families who don't necessarily have major installations to focus their efforts on, who are out there, in many cases, spread out throughout their states and throughout the country. What have we learned, and how do we better support them as we prepare for the future? So those are the questions that we face. We are very aware of those. But we need everyone's help to help us move forward. And I'm happy for everybody who's here today, but I'm also happy for those who are connected in virtually. I want to welcome you all here, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank my wife, Linda, who's been by my side for 37 years in the Army, who's done about every job possible in family readiness, in volunteering, and helps me every day to understand the issues that our families face, sometimes from a very different perspective than I have, because of her great experience. So I want to personally thank her for her dedication to our soldiers and our families for all this time, like many of you have dedicated your lives to our soldiers and families. Thank you.
Hello, Moto. Can you hear me? Hey, I'm the rubber meets the road kind of guy, and I'm very excited to be here today because it's been a privilege for my wife, Jean, and I to serve the Army families for the last couple of, 2.5 years or so we've been in this position. I'd also like to thank each and every spouse and family member that's here for staying with us. It's been a long, hard road for our families, for our soldiers, for the entire Army, and I know I would not be successful if it wasn't for my bride. And I'm sure that your soldier also feels the same way with you, and our folks that are at remote locations the same. It's been a difficult fight, and it's been a difficult time for our Army, but we're strong, And it's our families, as the chief said, that really make that for us. And so Gene and I are very grateful for the opportunity. And I'm also grateful that both the director of the Army National Guard and the chief of the Army Reserve here, because we're a total Army. I mean, together we've got to make this work both now and into the future. And gentlemen and your ladies, thank you so much for being here. I would tell you that when Gene and I travel around the Army, as we're privileged to do, what we hear is that, you know, there are programs that are working for us, but there are also some that are not. And I just want to echo both the Secretary and the Chief's comments that we really, really need your feedback. And then we have to understand that there are some things that we're probably not going to have in the service anymore, and that's okay, because we've really got to concentrate on the ones that are effective and efficient and provide the best opportunities for our families to grow and excel. The other thing that I'd ask us all to consider is that our young people are much different from the time that the chief came in the Army and I came in the Army. Our families are different now, and that we've got to find new opportunities and ways to reach out to them and enable them and help them to grow and develop into the strong Army families that we need for our Army to be successful into the future. And the last thing I'd like to do is recognize the Lambert family back here. Mrs. Lambert and the two daughters. You know, her husband, Jim, is deployed right now and is in Afghanistan and is helping our Army do a pretty dirty job called retrograde and helping us get all of our equipment out. Not quite as sexy as being at the pointy tip of the spear, but very, very crucial to the success of our Army. So just want to say hi to you guys and glad to see that you're here. But we're strong. Our Army is strong. Our families are strong. And it's exciting to be here and look forward to your questions. So thank you very much.
I think Patty's going to moderate. Okay.
Sorry about that. Thank you, gentlemen. So we are going to open it up for questions. We've got mics stationed throughout the room, and we'll also be receiving questions from our virtual audience. So do we have a question to get us started?
Good afternoon. My soldier is at Fort Lee, Virginia. We're part of an AIT training battalion. And I'm wondering, what you mentioned about grabbing those younger soldiers into and letting them know what's going on, and we don't have their families with us. And all the negativity and challenges that we're seeing in the news, how are we supposed to grab them and give them the good part of this wonderful Army before they get scared, even before they get to their first unit?
Well, I think one of the things we have to do is to be empathetic towards young people who are coming into an environment that they're not used to. You know, many of our soldiers, you know, are coming from single-parent homes, latchkey kids. They've grown up in a very different world, and they're looking for leadership, and they're looking for folks to step forward and tell them what's right and how to move forward. I don't have the answer. That's why I threw it out there. So, you know. But I do know that they live in the virtual world, and they are texting and Facebooking, and we've got to pull them into the Army family and kind of expose them to other ways to communicate beyond what they're very comfortable with. And I think if we challenge them, but also take the time to spend with them, which is one of the most difficult things for anybody to do, is to give up their time, that we will begin to see a difference. You know, one of the things that Gene and I have seen is that folks are really not interested, our young people aren't interested in, you know, family readiness groups per se. But they are interested in being part of, for instance, a coffee or a tea or a welcome. And if we can get that even down to the most junior level, I think that will start to make a difference and help people to become more connected, because we are a team. And if we're only in the virtual environment, we'll never establish that one thing is that human touch piece that I think is extremely important.
If I could just add, I think it's a phased operation that we have to conduct as we reach out, especially to our young families. The first phase, as some majors just mentioned, is a lot of them, really, they do everything by virtual, whether it's texting, whether it's Facebook, whether it's email, whether it's whatever their local newest fad is, which I have trouble keeping up with. But the main thing is that we have to make initial contact. And if that's virtually, then that's what we have to focus on. But then, as the Sergeant Major said, the next phase is, in the Army, in my mind, it's about personal contact. It's about personal relationships. And if that's the way we bring them in and then follow that up with getting them involved slowly over time and other things that bring them to meet people and visit people and actually talk to people who have similar experiences. You know, to me, that's valuable. You probably understand better how you do this, but we have to just understand young people are different today. And, you know, I always remember back about 2 years ago, we had Coach Krzyzewski come talk to a leadership group, and he explained how he's had to change how he recruits young athletes to go play basketball at Duke. And he had to learn how to do texting, and then he had to learn how to do Twitter, and then he had to learn, because that's how he initially connected with them. And then he would expand that, and then start building personal. And I think that's the same thing that we have to do. And we have to figure out how to do that. It's a complex web in some cases, but I think that's how we have to bring them in and let them understand that there are people that care. There are people that want to reach out to them. It won't be the same as when we first came in, as the Sergeant Major said. And so I think it's important we think our way through those things. The AIT, the challenge you have in AIT is the same the National Guard and U.S. Army Reserve has with all their soldiers. Because they only have, you know, they don't have limited, they have less contact than we do, and they have to come up with ways to do this as well. So it's an issue that I think we really have to work our way through.
If I could just add, and obviously I fully agree with everything Sergeant Major and the Chief said. The final dimension to that is our relearning something that maybe we pushed too far in the recent past, and that is we became very respectful of what we thought was privacy. And whether it was how we pushed new housing that would take young single soldiers and allow them a place by which they go back to their room and, again, through this virtual world, have absolutely no contact, no oversight, or some other type of initiative of that ilk, we probably took that a little too far. And I know the Sergeant Major has been very involved with this. What we're trying to do now is kind of backstep to some extent. We still need to be respectful of privacy, but sergeants need to keep an eye on their troops. They need to know what's going on. There's nothing wrong with units making sure that they're not letting particularly younger soldiers become isolated. Because again, repeating what both the Chief and the Sergeant Major said, these young people today have the capability to go unto themselves, to go into that virtual world. And what we've seen in a number of high-profile cases of disciplinary issues is that for some young people particularly, they don't see a conflict between who they are on a day-to-day basis in their own skin and who they are as someone very different, sometimes someone with very evil traits in the virtual world. They create a parallel life and somehow try to exist across those two dimensions. So these are different challenges that, frankly, we don't fully understand yet, but I think it's important that we recognize that they're out there and they exist. And we're working hard to find the appropriate balance and make sure, as the questioner said, that particularly our young recruits are not totally scared out of their minds or totally discouraged before they ever reach their first permanent assignment.
Thank you. Speaking of virtual world, we have a question from Fort Bragg. And this question is, will the duty assignments be longer, less PCS moves with some of the budget cuts?
Well, I think it's dependent. I mean, so I'm going to give an answer they probably don't want to hear. It depends on a lot of things. I think it's in the best interest of our soldiers, their families, as well as the Army to leave them in place when it makes sense. What gets in the way is professional development opportunities. So it really works better for younger soldiers. It becomes a little bit more difficult for officers and non-commissioned officers because we want to give them the professional development opportunities that allows them to understand the Army and understand and give them the responsibility for them to continue to move forward. But we certainly can balance that against leaving them longer in certain places. I think there's some great advantages to that, especially with family and in some cases within the unit. But I will say, with officers, as you become more senior as an officer and more senior as a non-commissioned officer, your diversity of assignments and is important as well. That you have the experience, whether it's in an airborne unit or a light unit or a heavy unit or medium unit, that you have the opportunity to experience all those, because that makes you a better senior leader in the end. So I think it's a balance. That's why I don't want to give a specific answer. What I would say is I think we want to leave them there as long as it makes sense. And if its first assignment is 4 years or 5 years, that's probably okay for them in the Army. But as they become more senior, we're going to have to move them around for professional development opportunities. Sergeant Major, I don't know if you
The only other thing I'd add is I'm going to put a plug in there for the drill sergeant and recruiter program. So if your spouse is a sergeant or staff sergeant, we can pretty much guarantee you that if you volunteer to be a recruiter, we'll keep you in the community for 3 years. And if you're a drill sergeant, we'll keep you at one of our training centers for at least 2 years and maybe 3. So we can give you some stability, and you can really give back to the Army, as we need you to have one of those broadening experiences.
that was shameless.
Hey, sir.
Another
it was right, but it was shameless.
We have another virtual question, and this is for Secretary McHugh. What is the DA doing to facilitate the creation of charter schools on Army installations as directed by Congress?
Well, that's not a Department of the Army responsibility. That's a DOD responsibility. Obviously, we're going to play a supporting role, and to state the obvious again, we have a responsibility under congressional direction to pursue that. I would say, given my way, and I rarely am given my way, but given my way, I think the more urgent challenge is to ensure that those schools that are operated through DODIA, both on-base and the off-base schools that we have that are predominantly supported through federal impact aid, where the majority of students are Army-driven, Army-derived, that we got to make sure they're functioning as well as absolutely possible. Now, where there are pushes to have so-called school choice, to provide greater options and opportunities in concert with communities and such, then DOD is going to try to look hard on those. But I would be way outside my lane to tell you exactly how that'll be implemented in the near future. But I can tell you we are working the issue of education, DODIA schools, sub-performing public schools just outside the camps, posts, and stations gates that we have to make sure are providing the best possible education for our young people.
If I could just add something to that. So, and the Secretary touched on it there at the end. I think where we can influence is those that are underperforming. We have to identify those schools that are underperforming, whether it be elementary schools, whether it be middle schools, whether it be high schools. And I have actually asked for an evaluation of every school outside of every Army installation. The reason I've asked for that is I get governors and I get congressmen ask me all the time what they can do for me, and I'm going to tell them what they can do for me. That they need to, if they want to keep the military in their communities, they better start paying attention to the schools that are outside and inside our installations. Because as we evaluate and as we make decisions on future force structure, that will be one of the criteria. And so for us, the assessments are important. So we can start putting pressure on them to do what's right for our young people. And they should be doing that for all the young kids in their state, but I'm worried about the military kids in their state. And that's my constituency. And that's who we want to make sure we fight for. So I can't give you an answer on charter schools, as the Secretary said. That's a bit out of our control. But what we can do is focus on making sure that we are putting pressure on those responsible for providing the appropriate level of education for our young people, and we'll continue to do that. And I'm waiting, they're working an assessment for us now that comes forward. It gives us an assessment of the schools, and really the ones that are underperforming, based on a variety of criteria that's been set.
Okay, I've got...
No, go ahead.
I've got another virtual question, but is there anyone in the audience that would like to take a turn? Okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. I just want to make an observation first, if I may. My introduction to working with the military came in 2005 when I became a contractor working at Aberdeen Proving Ground for the Joint Personnel Effects Depot. That's a place you never want anyone's gear to end up at, but when it does happen, I can tell you, for all of you family members, that if you think that your soldier is not thinking about you back home, you are oh so wrong. Part of our job is reading the letters, going through the pictures, and I will tell you, they care. You are in their hearts every moment of their deployment. That said, since that time, I have become a junior grade DA civilian, and now at the age of 42, I'm about to become a first-time bride, entering the Army family as a military spouse. What can I do to help you and my soldier in senior leadership, as he is a command sergeant major? What can I do to help, one, jump in, both feet, and secondly, move the mission forward, not only through that command, the Army at large, and for the unique challenges of my own soldier?
Well, if I may, first of all, thank you for what you were doing at Aberdeen. I don't know if you're going to continue in that particular position. You have another pretty important one that you've evolved at. I won't repeat your age. That's your call, not mine. But congratulations. Wish you best. If you ask what you can do, kind of look around the room here. This room is populated by folks who are relatively in the same position as you, military spouse. They have taken it upon themselves to be leaders, whether it's an FRG or some other kind of support activity. You saw the Flores family. You heard about some of the things they do. The thing I think that causes most Americans to think so highly of men and women who wear uniform and their families is because those are the folks that, in ways that it counts in the communities where our camps, posts, and stations are located, just go out there and volunteer, try to be good citizens, try to make a difference. And if you have the opportunity, being the spouse of a command sergeant major, to make a difference in a young soldier's life and just listen and be there and be helpful, that's about all we can ask. In fact, that's more than you sign up for technically on a piece of paper. So just try to do the best you can to be a great Army spouse, and more importantly, to be a great citizen, which you've already shown you're pretty good at. So thank you.
If I could, 42 is the good old days for me, so I just want you to know. Just to add to what the Secretary said, first, what I've found when I've watched my spouse and others is, first thing is to just have a positive attitude. And that might sound easy, but the Army will challenge that at times. But spouses who continue to have a positive attitude in supporting their soldier goes a long way, a long way. And it impacts others around you, and it impacts your family, and it impacts many other things. The other thing is, find something you have a passion about. And, and we need help everywhere. So if there's something you have a passion about, then get involved and do it slowly. We're thankful for everything you do as a spouse and a volunteer. We get a lot. We don't give much back for it except for a handshake or a pat on the back or a certificate of some sort. But you can add so much. So just find something that you're passionate about, you like, and you really feel good about contributing, and you'll really make a difference. And whether that's being in a family readiness group or whether that's helping out in some other area, there's so many places. And we have offices that you can go to, and they can tell you the kind of work you can volunteer in. And to me, those are the two pieces of advice that I give you, and I want to welcome you to the Army family. So, thanks.
I want to say welcome also as a former contractor, now Department of the Army civilian, and now joining the uniform side. Thanks for what you're about to step into. And I'd ask you to take a look at Army Family Team Building. You can either get it through your Army Community Service or online. And that's just a great way to understand just basic stuff about the Army. It's a great program. Underutilized, I think, but it is a great way to understand and learn about, you know, the basic lingo and language and rank structure and how things work within the Army and the opportunities that, you know, the family morale, welfare, and recreation and Army Community Services can provide. And I think that's a great starting point. And then, you know, you're going to be a part of a team. You know, you and your husband, obviously part of a command team along with that general officer and their spouse. And it's going to be a great ride. And I think you'll look back and say, you know, this has been wonderful and I've made a difference. And I think that's all you can ask for.
I'm going to make sure you don't pass them any money on the way out.
Great.
Yeah, we don't list all the Army language on that site, so it'll be
which is probably a good thing. We have another question from a virtual delegate, and this one is for General Odierno. 3 to 5 years into joint basing, what savings have been realized? What efficiencies have happened? Can these agreements be redone now that they are better known?
It's a very educated and good question. I'm looking at a couple of these joint guys. I think they would have asked it, but they're here, so there couldn't have been them who asked it virtually. So first off, we're taking a look at this right now. So what we've asked is the Director of the Army Staff has now formed a group with the other service directors of their staffs to take a look at joint basing. To look at specifically the question that you asked me, which is, are we getting savings from it? How is it going? Are we doing an assessment? It's time for us to do an assessment. It's been now 3 to 5 years, as you said, and it's time for us to assess, are we getting the benefits out of it? Is it working? Where are we having problems? Because in some places we are having problems with joint basing. So we're taking a hard look at this. I will then get with the other service chiefs, and then we'll bring it to the secretaries, and then we'll move forward on what we think the way ahead is. It is working in some places better than others. So we really are now going to assess that and then decide where we want to go moving forward. There's problems with, you know, I mean, I don't have to tell you, but especially the person who asked that question, there is a difference in cultures between the services. And there's a difference in what we think we should have, and there's a difference in what they think we should have, and there's a difference in what they think we should have and what we think they should have. You know, and we have to work our way through that. But there are certain expectations. And so we have to sit down now and take a look at it. And are we truly reaping the benefits, the savings that we thought we would? And what is the cost to our families and our other programs that we have on our installation? So that's what we've asked them to take a look at. And you've just reminded me to ask where we are on that, because it's been a while since I've got an update, and I will do that as soon as I get back to my office this evening. And we'll continue to move forward, because it is a point that's brought up by many.
Thank you, sir. Another virtual delegate question. How do we transition our soldiers and families to a garrison lifestyle versus the deployment lifestyle? Many of our younger soldiers and families only know that their soldier is home for a year and then gone again for a year. Many don't know how to adjust to being together.
I'll start, and I know both the chief and the sergeant major have a lot of very good thoughts on this. I think that is one of the most critical questions we face in the days ahead as we transition out of Afghanistan. I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan now, I think, a total of 26 times. And the thing that I've always been struck by, since my first visit in 2003 to Iraq, right up until today, is the young soldiers especially that we have out there forward in these theaters with oftentimes not a whole lot of command structure over them, just doing amazing things. And there's no other way to put it, they thrive on it. They really enjoy what they're doing. They're proud of the work they're doing. And that's why they keep signing back up. And now as we bring those typically younger soldiers home, to fail to understand the need to provide some kind of excitement, some kind of challenge, to bring them into garrison and bore them to death and to put them into circumstances that they haven't had to deal with, many of them in their entire military career, will cause us to lose them certainly out of uniform, and we run the risk of losing them in other ways. So we're taking this very, very seriously. It's one of the biggest challenges, frankly, we have in assuring we're appropriately resourced, because part of the way you bring them back, you keep them engaged, you keep them interested in their own lives and the lives of others, is to make sure you've got enough for training, that you have enough for education, that you have enough of opportunities to stimulate them and to keep them finding a substitute for that excitement that they've often found on the battlefield for the last 11 years. Resourcing will be critical. But providing programs, things for them to do, getting them out of the barracks, bringing them back together, teaching them that they're a band of brothers and sisters in ways that perhaps is somewhat different than they were those brothers and sisters forward deployed. So we're taking a very, very hard look at this. It's something we take very seriously, and it's one of the places, frankly, where we're going to be particularly challenged.
So, you know, if you're a major today, or if you're a sergeant first class today, you've probably never experienced anything but 12 years of war. So we have to deal with that. So I have several things that I think we have to work. The Secretary mentioned a lot of them. First thing we have to do is make sure we provide the financial counseling and responsibility, because you're not going to get the benefits that you've been getting for 12 years. Tax-free pay, combat pay, other pay, so you're going to get less money. So we have to put programs in place that better helps them to manage the amount of income that you now get. That's for everybody, from 4-star general down to private. We're all going to get less money when we're not deployed. So we got to manage our way through that, and it's important that we develop programs to do that. The other thing, though, this is a leadership issue in my mind, because we've done this before. It's okay to be in an army that's not deployed all the time. I was in an army for a fairly long time between deployments. And there's really great things about the army. You actually get to spend more time with your family. You actually get to develop yourself personally. You get to do many, many things. So we have to, through leadership, we have to talk to our soldiers about this. It provides you new opportunities. And we're developing some things in the Army, like our concept of regional line forces, where you're going to get to go for weeks to places around the world instead of months. So there'll still be plenty of challenges out there. But it's about our leaders sitting down and talking them through this and making them understand that it's okay. They should be, we are in a transition in our Army where we need leaders who are going to help us to make that transition. That's challenging. And so there's plenty of challenges out there for our young leaders. But there's also many things that we have to help them with as they transition back to a garrison army. I don't like that term, but to a peacetime force, maybe is a better word. It's okay. The bottom line is they're probably going to be asked to do this again at some time. And so it's important for us to take advantage. And from a military perspective, you know, what we've done for the last 12 years is we talk about we've consumed readiness, we call it. You know, for all through the 80s, we built up a new Army that was built up on building readiness and building leaders and building things so they would be prepared to do what we asked them to do. And then we had Desert Storm, and then we built it again in the 90s. And then we ended up with Iraq and Afghanistan. But we were ready because of that time, because of the investment that leaders made, the investment we made in our families. And that's what the period we're transitioning to. Again, we have to be able to think about that. We're now rebuilding our readiness. We're investing again in that because we don't know when they'll ask us again to do something like this. So we take those lessons we've learned, we now invest forward in our soldiers and our families. And that's what we have to think about. To me, that can be very exciting. And it provides us, again, it provides us time to spend a little more time with our families, maybe even to have a family. You know, there was times with young lieutenants and other captains and NCOs, they would tell me they didn't have time to have a family because they were either deployed or they're getting ready to deploy again. They would talk about how I don't even have time to meet anybody. So there's lots of opportunities here. So you got to look at there's so many things that we now can do, and that's what we have to help with. But there are some programs. We're going to have residual effects of the war, both physically and mentally, that we have to prepare, that we have to help make sure we have those programs in place. We have to help them financially, and then we have to make sure they stay excited about what we're going to do. And I think there's plenty to be excited about.
Well, the chief and the secretary stole almost every single thing I was going to say. So,
next time we'll start with.
Seriously, though, let's be grateful that our young men and women who have been deployed are finally going to be able to come home at the end of this thing, and that we're going to be able to reset the Army and our families in preparation for what's next, because we don't know what's going to happen next. And let's remember the sacrifice of so many soldiers and families over the last 12 years, and never forget the sacrifice, some who paid all, of these young men and women who have given so much. And then really the last thing, just to echo the chief's statement, we're going to spend a lot of time resetting our soldiers and our families for those both visible and invisible wounds of the last 12 years. And we can't ever forget that just because we've come out of the actual kinetic armed conflict, that there are people out there that are in crisis that we need to wrap our arms around and help them to get the help that they need.
Thank you. We're almost out of time, so I'm going to take the prerogative to be able to ask the last question, and it's a great question. You're going to love it. And it's going to be a short answer since we want to get you out of here on time. And the question is, there's probably many things that keep you up at night. But I'd like to know from each one of you what one thing motivates you every single day. Now, you're going to tell me Army families are wonderful, they're fantastic, I love them. I got all that, yep. I want something really specific. What really gets you going and really makes you think, I've got to do this because this is important? And we'll start with the Sergeant Major of the Army this time.
See, now I was going to pass that one over to the chief. I think one of the things that that definitely keeps me up at night is, well, actually, there's two things. So the first one is that we start to forget about our wounded warriors and their families as we transition towards an Army of preparation, and that many of them are in our communities and many of them are at post camps and stations. But the challenges of the future with health care and both for their physical wounds and for behavioral health will continue to be with us. And we've got to remember or never forget that some of these processes to help them heal take long periods of time, and that they have given so much that we can't forget that there are going to be challenges for them into the future, and we need to do everything we possibly can to help them. And then for the families of the fallen, to understand that that will never heal, and that we've got to honor and respect those families and their sacrifices for the rest of the time that we have a country, because they've given something in a debt that we can never repay. And for me, that's the two things.
So first, what keeps me going every day, and I said it actually today in a little press conference Secretary and I did, is although there's great uncertainty surrounding our budget and great uncertainty surrounding the future, there's one thing that has stayed certain, and that's the steadfast commitment, competence, and character of our soldiers. That motivates me. That no matter what the conditions, they have remained the best trained, best Army in the world. That's what motivates me. And what motivates me as we go forward is that we don't know what's going to be next. And we have to make sure we're prepared. And that also keeps me up at night, to make sure that we are prepared. Because when somebody ultimately asks me, what do you do to take care of soldiers? My job to take care of soldiers is to make sure they have the proper training, the proper equipment, and the proper resources to do their job. So when they go, they can do it and come back home. That's how I can best take care of soldiers. That's how my Secretary, the Sergeant Major, and all leaders can best take care of their soldiers. That's what keeps me up at night right now. Thank you.
Well, I would say what keeps me up at night depends on what night you're talking about. And I know that's the same for the Sergeant Major and for the Chief. Frankly, if I had to pick one, it has to do with our uncertain fiscal situation, simply because that kind of starts our ability and ends our opportunity to do everything we need for these soldiers and to continue to build upon what they have sacrificed so much to give us. I suspect my motivation, although not a lot different than the Sergeant Major or the Chief, comes from a different place. You know, they've given their lives, their entire careers, as have their spouses, to the uniform and to this country. Because of medical issues, I didn't have the chance to serve. I tried to volunteer, it didn't work. And for 17 years in the House of Representatives and the Armed Services Committee, I thought I was helping. I now know maybe I didn't help quite as much as I thought I was. But when the President called me, and first of all, I'm a registered Republican, so his call wasn't exactly something I was hanging around waiting for. But when he called me, he presented me an opportunity in a small way to work firsthand with those incredible men and women in uniform that I've been trying to help as a member of Congress. And I've said a million times to myself, mostly, that when I wake up in the morning sometimes this is the worst job I could ever imagine. But every single night when I come home, I know I'm the most blessed man in America, and it's the greatest job I could ever hope for. And it's a simple reason, really. You get to support soldiers. You get to do something each and every day, even if something small, to build upon the sacrifices that they make. And for a guy like me that maybe hadn't had that opportunity yet, that's an incredible motivator. And as long as I'm provided the honor to continue that, I feel very blessed.
I have an alibi, I don't want to say, excuse me, of what keeps me up at night. The other thing is that the American people expect more out of the military and the Army than any other institution. And currently, we are not an Army free of harassment. And so it's important for us that we take on very seriously the issue of harassment, whether it be sexual harassment, whether it be bullying, and other varieties of harassment that go on there. People expect us to solve this problem, and they should. Because we are an institution that represents the United States. We are a diverse institution that allows all people, no matter your background, to serve. All you have to do is raise your right hand and qualify, and you're going to be in the Army. What we owe them is a workplace that guarantees them the ability to maximize their potential. And right now, we're not there. And sexual harassment is a real problem. We're making progress, but we're not making it fast enough. It's a culture. And for the Army to be successful in the future, it's going to take all of the men and women who want to serve to have the capability and ability to serve to their maximum potential. And in order to do that, we have to create a culture that encourages that. And that is really important as we move forward as an Army and as a military. And we are an institution that people look up to. And I want us to be the ones who are breaking the ground, who are enabling everyone to have the right opportunities and have the ability to reach their goals. And the secretary is dedicated to that, I know. He talks to me about that regularly. The Sergeant Major is dedicated to that, and all our leaders are. But we have to, it's going to take us some time. And we've got to get that moving forward very, very quickly. And I just thought it was important that I connect to that. Sorry. Thanks.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so very much for honoring us with your presence and your participation. I think we're in exceptionally great hands as a infantry wife, Hua, and thank you very much again for coming.
Cool.
Right, we'll regroup tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and we're going to start some really fun panels, and I hope that you'll join us.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Paulette's coming with the other two.